Welcome to SBI's GTM Value Creation Corner podcast with SBI CEO Mike Hoffman hosting.
In this episode, we rejoin the second half of the conversation between Mike and Chris Cabrera, founder and board member of Xactly and the author of The Unicorn Fallacy. Listen in as they continue to exchange ideas on the types of deals that drive sustainable revenue, as well as why some companies miss the mark in their pursuit of growth.
So this is good. I'm going to skip around a little bit. I have a question, and this really goes toward Xactly, and it also goes to some of what we're discovering in some of our talent offerings, or AI-driven talent offerings. Is it possible to overpay top performers?
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, I think I think it gets back to what are you incentivizing? Right? I mean, the thing that I find very hard to square is I talk to companies, and I have for 25 years in this particular space, every day. And I go in and I see comp plans, and I go in and talk to sales leaders about how they're motivating their people. And it's almost hard for me to believe that when I walk into a company and we talk about, a particular deal. We say, okay, let's say your rep is going to close $100,000 ARR deal. If you have one rep who closes a 1-year $100,000 ARR deal, and right sitting next to them, or virtually sitting next to them, is a different rep who closes the same 100K deal, but it's a 5-year term with annual price increases of 5%, do you pay differently for those two deals? And the answer is they do not. I'm telling you, 99 out of 100 companies that I go see, the two deals I just described will pay the rep the same amount of money because they are not incentivizing them for price increases and length of term. It's very, very unusual. Now, someone on the phone is sitting there pounding their chest because they do, and they're calling me a liar, but I'm telling you, they are an outlier, right? The vast, vast majority they're focused on ARR only, and they're focused on net ARR, which is another whole thing we could talk about on why companies think they're paying on discounting practices, which they're not. But in that example, I think it goes to your question, which is, we're paying people the wrong way. Why, if you're a business that cares about quality, the second deal is worth way more than the 1-year deal. It's just it.
Right.
Why would you not pay more for that deal? But we don't.
It is surprising to see, I'm with you, how many companies are still, when we go to do a comp engagement, how many companies, so I'll reinforce that, still not rewarding that appropriately.
Yeah, they're not focused on the right things. And so, yeah, you've got reps out there that are making tons of money in some cases, but you'd have to ask yourself, what are we getting for what we just paid all that money for? Right? Because the reps they're doing what you incentivize them to do, right? My first book, Game the Plan, was all about, if you create a plan, don't be surprised when the reps game it. That's their job. Their job is to game the plan, and you've hired them with the DNA to do that. If they do that and it's at your detriment, shame on you. If you read my first book and then you build plans that are designed so that when they're gamed, both parties win, that's the nirvana, right? But again, even after 25 years of doing this, the vast majority of folks out there do not fit this.
Shifting gears, I want to shift gears a little bit, and this goes to, because I asked the question, is it possible to overpay top performers for a reason? And on page 191, you asked the question, what would it look like to generate 2 to 5% more performance from every single sales rep in your business? So the question I would ask you is, what factors, when you think about it, or you think through this, what factors will impact the ability to do that? And then how fast can you realize an uplift like that?
Yeah, so look, I mean, I think we could spend the entire rest of today talking about examples of how if you pay differently and pay correctly and change the way you're doing things, you can see market results in a relatively short period of time. But let's come back to the example that I've already thrown out, just to keep it consistent and simple. For many, many, many years, for the first 15 years of the company, we were guilty of focusing on first-year ARR. We did not have annual increases built into our contracts, and we didn't care about multi-year. We didn't view that as a valuable thing for some reason. Years ago, we changed that. And so think about that. So let's say we were a $100 million company doing it the old-fashioned way, no annual increases whatsoever. We changed and started putting annual increases in our contract with every single new contract and focusing on 5-year deals. So now imagine that the next 100 million that we got, including the renewals of the first 100, came with 5-year deals and 5% increase per year. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about, where if you can get your reps thinking about just those 2 minor changes and caring about them on every deal and not conceding them and holding to their guns to get them, think of how much before you get out of bed, you've got this 5% increase coming in every day or every year, right? That's pretty significant, and the compounding effect of that is pretty impressive. Now, listen, I know that many folks push back on that. I push back on that when someone's trying to sell that to me. But depending on how good the salesperson is and the arguments they give me, and how, if they don't just cave on it, we'll end up paying that, right? Because, many, many, many of the software companies, especially the biggest ones, they're all doing that. Some of them are getting 8% or 9%, even more, right? So I think that's an example of the simplest way to do it. And then to answer that last part of your question, as far as how fast, the impact can be, think about it. It's almost immediate, right? You start seeing those results right away when you're doing these better deals. Now, the last point I'll make is before we made this change and we were a $100 million company, I literally had $100 million of the business coming up for renewal every year, because we basically were just signing 1-year contracts for the most part, right? So think about, from an organizational standpoint, the strain on the organization to go through that process of getting the renewal done, talking to the customer, negotiating, going through all that. Today's world at Xactly, I think the number's like 30% of the customers come up for renewal in a given year. Might even be less than that, which means we can focus on a lot fewer companies coming up for renewal, and the rest, they're not up for renewal, so they don't have an opportunity to gig you for a discount or those kind of things. And so it just creates a much smoother operation, much more efficient operation, and all of that drops directly to the bottom line almost instantaneously.
Yeah, that was the comment I was going to make. Is aside from, because you may have a super sticky product that you're fairly sure is going to be hard for them to rip out and change anyway, but just going through the renewal process and the stress that's associated with making sure you get the right amount of renewals every year, it's that's for the birds. Having the peace of mind that most of your revenue is already locked down for the year, it's big.
Yep.
Right. I'm going to go a little bit in a speed round here, and what you and I we'll kick around a couple of things. I'm going backward in the book to where you said, just because something worked for you in the past doesn't mean it will work for you in the future. In fact, it likely won't. And I'm going to tell a little story, and then I'm going to tell you what our point of view is right now, and I want to see if you agree or disagree with this thing. So, the story is about this. In your operating model, right? Those conditions for success, so you can keep the silver medalists and you keep your heroes and you keep the right sales team. The things you need to think about, everybody has a version of this, right? Bain, McKinsey, BCG, SBI, we all have our version of this. On ours, there happen to be 56 boxes. And if you're a CRO who's been really successful in their last 2 endeavors and you come in to a new company, your odds of getting it right, picking like what are the 5 things that matter, if you pick them at random, your chances are 1 in 12 million of getting that permutation right. It's almost the equivalent of winning the lottery. even if you have a little bit of background, you might get some of them right, but not all of them. So one of the things we talk about is what are the reasons most companies get it wrong from a revenue standpoint. And so I will start with the first one, which is there is an incongruence and dysfunction between management teams and investors on what drives real growth and real value. Agree or disagree?
I agree.
Yeah, and this goes back when I think about some of the things in your book is the real and sustained value. There might be short-term value that was driven out of growth at any cost, but the long-term value, you may have an incongruence between CRO and CEO and the board. So that's one. Number two, there are so many levers to pull that you have more chances of pulling the wrong permutation versus pulling the right permutation without guidance.
I agree.
And that goes back to kind of the dynamic nature of growth and then the 56 boxes. Number three, revenue leaders activate the wrong levers out of familiarity or past experience, not because they're incapable or they're stupid.
I completely agree.
We tend to play the wrong ones. Companies have difficulty seeing the next horizon because they're busy with today and making sure they make this quarter and the next quarter.
Yes, I agree.
And the last one, and this, I think this goes with your intelligent revenues, which is why I loved it so much. Companies focus on a long-term growth program after things have gone wrong versus having it be an evergreen thing.
Yeah, don't make it a reaction. No, I think you hit on a lot of great points. I think these are a lot of the mistakes that sales leaders make. And the thing that I would just say on this is we tend to just overcomplicate it. This is not that hard. And if you can just focus on a small number of high impact areas, like I just talked about, right? Like the contract, annual increase, and discount, how you handle discounting. I mean, if you did nothing but focus on those three things, I don't care what industry you're in, if you're selling SaaS, those are going to move the needle, right? But yet I go in and look at comp plans, and there's 10 things on the comp plan that they're trying to drive. And I know the rep has no clue what, if you went to the rep and said, what do you think management, thinks your job is and wants you to do? They have no idea. They're just spitting popcorn because, and it's not driving behavior, right? That's the whole point. It's like they win the lottery if they get a good comp check. They're not sitting there going, I could just get this, close this deal at a better discount with a 5-year deal and 5% increase. I'm going to really move the needle. Like, just give them a few things to focus on, 2 or 3, no more. Make those 2 or 3 things be the things that most move the bottom line. And you're going to be successful. It's just not that hard, but we overcomplicate this and then we end up doing nothing right.
Right. And this goes to, so this is great. And this is kind of a great summary of the whole thing. I remember once hearing that comp plans don't solve business problems, but they do drive behavior. Make sure when you're building your compensation plans for your team that they're driving the behaviors that are solving the business problems that you've identified or the business opportunities.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I get so crazy about is because you talk to so many CEOs and CFOs and they're sort of pissed off at the sales team and they'll say, these goddamn reps, they're gaming the plan or I just laugh at them because I'm like, you realize that just doing what you incentivize them to do, that's all. I mean, you can just show me any comp plan and in 5 minutes, I can tell you what behavior it's going to drive. And then we can decide if that's the behavior you want or not, but that's what it's going to do, right? And for people to act surprised by that or annoyed by it, to me, is unbelievable. Right? Instead, like you have these horses, you know how they're going to behave. Why not dial into that, right? Take advantage of that. But yet it's just incredulous how many people. I mean, I've made a whole life and career on solving this problem because and it's such a simple problem that it's incredible. But people just don't do it right. It's incredible how many people do it wrong.
Right. You should. there could be a job out there. At SBI, we should hire a consultant whose entire job is, you hand me the comp plan and I will tell you in 5 minutes how I'm going to abuse it and I'm going to game the system and you're not going to get what you wanted.
Yeah. It is not rocket science. It is so predictable.
Yeah. So Chris, this was, as you can tell, I read the whole thing. It was engaging. It was a great book. Congratulations. I appreciate you being on the show today. If you're open to it, would love to have you back, because I think there are some areas we touched on that we could spend an entire 30 minutes on.
Yeah. Always enjoy coming on.
All right. And thanks for being a long-term supporter of SBI as well. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You guys did great.
You've been listening to SBI's GTM Value Creation Corner podcast with CEO Mike Hoffman hosting. Visit SBIgrowth.com to read SBI's latest research, join upcoming events, or learn about SBI's GTM services. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and connect with us on LinkedIn.